Welcome back to Chapter 1. This is the podcast where we sit down and we talk about media, specifically books, films, and music. And today we're talking about one of my all-time favorite bands that has truly altered the way that I consume music, and I'm really excited about it. We're talking about Odesza today, not just in general. I sat down and I listened to their album A Moment Apart, which is just so beautiful on a lot of different levels. So if you don't know who Odesza is, they are a duo out of Washington State. Their creativity has really created this space in the electronic music world that I don't know. I mean, and I don't know who their like ancestors are in the music industry. I don't know who came before them because I haven't done a ton of research, but when I started listening to Odesza, it really just altered my taste for music. It altered my relationship with music. And I was coming from like a punk emo phase. Hell yeah, it's not a phase, Mom. And Odesza helped me kind of ease into this relationship with music that softened me. Emo punk music is emotional in its own sense, but a lot of it to me feels kind of hard and sad, and that's the whole point, right? This style of EDM feels like it allows for space for emotional connection, just in a different way, like in a more whimsical, soft, gentle way. And I think it's really beautiful. Like I said, prior to being exposed to Odesza, I was not relating to music in this way, so it really excited me when I found them. And I was introduced to them through their album In Return, which is this beautiful little album that it's just so playful to me. And today we're talking about their album A Moment Apart, which it blows my mind that this is their second album that they released, and it's this impactful and feels so thought out and considerate. So yeah, I have a lot to say about it, but A Moment Apart is a 16-track album, runs about just barely an hour, and like I said before, they're electronic music artists. When I was introduced to them, they were labeled as EDM, so electronic dance music. Now, and I haven't really Googled it lately, but their music feels like it's evolved into more of an emotional electro experience. And that's all based on my reaction. There's no science behind that. No one's said anything and confirmed that, so don't quote me. Or do. Do what you want. It's your life. If you want to quote me, go for it. So this album feels so thoughtful. It feels so fun and adventurous. And when I sit down and think about Odesza sitting down to write and record and create this album, it gives me goosebumps because it's such a grand thing that to me boils down to such a human thing. And that feels like the answer to life, right? Like everything's big but small, and everything's necessary but unnecessary, and everything matters but it doesn't matter at the same time, It's this like gray area, and I think that this album really holds that well, for me at least. A Moment Apart, when I was first introduced to it, I think it was promoted on like Instagram or something back in whatever. This was so long ago now. It's like the album's from like 2014 or something. It's so long ago. I was introduced to it through a social media post, something like that, and they were promoting the release of it. When I see something like this, I'll immediately Google it to get some more information on it. And so I recall doing that, and I believe I came across a post or an article or something that mentioned that this album was going to focus on the range of human emotion, which in the moment in 2014 or whenever this was, eons ago, I was like, oh, that's cool. And as I've related to this album over the years, I've been like, that's fucking cool. Like, I love when artists take something that is massively relatable and boil it down to something somewhat simple, right? And then just leap into that and create something that is so unique to them, and then they give it to us. It's insane. And that is like basically the entire guideline to art is take this thing, create it in your own way, and let us see it. That's oversimplifying art, obviously, but I like it at the same time. Art should be simple, but also totally complex and allow you to spin these tales in your mind about what it's about. That is so freeing and beautiful, and I don't think there should be a lot of guidelines around art. But anyway, a totally different conversation, which we can have later when you're older. But but yeah, this album was allegedly focusing on the range of human emotion. And now the way that they interpreted that and then decided to create it is so interesting to me, because it's not the route that I would have gone down. Maybe in like a million years, but like not like immediately. Which is great, because like I would have done it totally differently, whatever. So they chose to, or it feels like they chose to create this kind of sci-fi epic that is hosted in this album. The very first track is called Intro, and what it does is it sets you up through this dialogue and places you into this setting very intentionally, I think. And I found myself doing this when I physically sat myself down and was like, we're only listening to this album. We're not going to scroll simultaneously. We're not going to read simultaneously. We're not going to work out simultaneously. We're just listening to the music. And I have heard this intro a million times, because I've listened to this album a million times, approximately. Don't quote me. And it's never really like sunk me down into this setting before, because I've been distracted by whatever else I was doing. So it was really, really cool to almost be prepared. You know, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to go to Disney World or Disneyland, but in those places is a roller coaster ride called Space Mountain. And they do a really good job of setting you up for this quest that you're going on, right? And it's like a cosmic astronaut experience that you're going through. That's what this intro felt like. It felt like the cue to that ride. Like, you're getting set up mentally to experience this thing that is so grand and fun and adventurous. And they do it in such a tender, beautiful way, but it's so impactful. And then they just fucking launch you into this audio landscape that is cosmic, emotional, human, connected, again, adventurous. And what's also interesting about this is that this is their second album. It's a totally different sound from their first, but there are still moments in this album that pull me into their first album. There are certain combinations of notes or techniques that they use that still make it feel like their music. And I love when artists do that. Sometimes, for me, it's hard when an artist will release one kind of album and then switch into a totally different kind of album. It feels abrupt, and that's just me and the way that I process it. A really good example of this is pretty much any musical artist ever. They're allowed to do this, and they do it all the time, and I think it's great for them to experiment in other genres and techniques. But in my world, a great example of this is Greta Van Fleet. Their first few albums felt like this very structured algorithm that they had and they wanted to work on. And that could have been created because of contract restrictions or goals or whatever, you know? It could have been something that was totally outside of the artist's hands. But they created this sound that was really enjoyable and, to me, unique. Now, I know there's some controversy over that, but Greta Van Fleet felt like fresh and exciting. Fresh, but like vintage. And they have done a really nice job in all of their music. But when they switched into what felt like their real sound and like the way that they really wanted to handle music and create music and release music, it was almost kind of an abrupt, like, whoa, this is different. Are we sure this is Greta? Like, but with that said, it was really easy to get comfortable in that temperature change. What Odesza does, or did, excuse me, was it felt like they had this new sound that they really wanted to get into, but they still wanted to honor where they came from. And I love that. And it was done so nicely because they have this new grand sound, but it still has hints to where they came from. And to me, it was just done really well. The fact that I can pick up on that and relate to it and appreciate it says a lot from their perspective. And you know what I mean? It feels like they were considerate of the listeners and and they recognized that they were going into this new state. And they're like, okay, well, we can't like just cold turkey these people. Let's add in some of these sprinkles of our ancestry. So A Moment Apart, like I said previously, feels very sci-fi. It is sci-fi. That's how they set you up. I'm not going to even say it feels like it. That's what it is. And all 16 of these tracks just feel so approachable. If you like dancey electronic dance music, if you like dancing, you should just listen to this album in general. But each one of these tracks, I feel like you could pull out of this album and listen to it on its own and be like, this is a fucking hit. They're just, every single one is a jam. And they do a really nice job of building these songs up and utilizing a balance of bass and brass instruments and all these other techniques and instruments that are just, it's so nicely balanced. Like sometimes with electronic music, the bass, I understand its impact in a live setting. It can be too much for me, and that's just because of my taste. But I do not gravitate towards heavy bass melt your face kind of experiences. That's fun to experience live because it adds on a layer of physically feeling the music too, which I really do love. But when it's like that in a track, I usually kind of turn away from it. But Odesza has just a nice way of balancing everything that's in their tracks. It feels like the audio textures are really thought out, and I love that I can pick up on the fact that the bass is balanced with these like really high, just like I want to say synth notes. I don't even know what they are because I'm not a musician, but they're these like high pitched notes that just kind of play on your ears while this bass is like massaging your eardrums. Yeah, let that sink in for a moment. So you're getting multiple layers of enjoyment, and it just, they do such a nice job with it. And the fact that it is all held within this sci-fi concept makes you feel like when you sit down to listen to this album, you're going on a quest. And each one of these tracks is a chapter of that quest. And I really felt that when I sat down to listen to this. There are moments where I was like, oh yeah, we're in battle, okay? And now we're running through the woods to escape, or we're at a ceremony, or we're launching back to our planet now that we've helped this planet. And now we're in love, and now we've lost that love. And now we're heading home, and we've done the quest, and we've seen the planets, and we've loved the people, and now we get to go home knowing that we've experienced all of this really intense, beautiful stuff, for lack of a better term. And we get to lay down at night and go, yeah, I did that. I really did that. And that's what this album feels like to me. I would love to hear somebody else's opinion of this. Oh man, someone on like the total opposite end of the spectrum just being like, no, it's just music, bro. It's not like this. I don't think that there is any way that someone could sit down and relate to it in that way. I shouldn't say that. There are billions of people on this planet. There's at least one person that would be like, this is shit. This is absolute dog poop. But it won't be me. I won't allow that. Anyway, yeah, there are a few tracks in this album that just hit me so hard, and I usually gravitate towards the non-lyrical kind of work that they do, just because it allows for a little more creativity in my brain. I have a seriously creative brain, which I adore, and when I'm allowed to just listen to the notes and the way that they've been composed rather than be led through this narrative that respectfully has its own purpose, I just have a better time. That's not always true. Sometimes I do crave lyrics and that experience, but when it comes to electronic music, I really like to just sit in the sound waves. And they do a really nice job of balancing lyrical to non-lyrical songs in this album. A lot of the lyrical stuff is there to influence you, and I shouldn't say influence, that's so strong. I guess like inspire you to feel a certain way and to be in a certain headspace about this song. One of these songs in particular, it's called Across the Room. It features Leon Bridges, whose voice is unreal. Dude, talk about otherworldly. So smooth and balanced and just, ooh, we are lucky to be alive while Leon Bridges is. Sheesh. But this song, it almost feels jazzy to me, which compared to the rest of the tracks, it takes you out. And that might be the purpose of it. They might have created this track to be like, okay, let's pull them out of this cosmic experience to really focus on this part of the range of emotion, because it focuses on and leads you down this narrative of like the first spark that you feel with someone, like a stranger out in public, and that energy that you exchange. This is how I'm relating to it. That you know, don't quote me again. I'm not Odesza, but this is how I relate to it. It feels like when you're out in public and you see someone that you're like, oh, that human's kind of cute, and you pick up on them and they pick up on you, and there's something in your brain that just goes, oh yeah, we're both thinking that right now. And this song feels like that experience. And then if one of you acts on that experience, that's what it feels like. And it's so melty. Is that a descriptor? Yeah. It feels like that. It feels warm. It feels inviting. It feels natural. It feels exciting, which I really love. And I love the fact that amongst all of these electronic, very bassy, well, not very bassy, but electronic, balanced, bassy tracks is this almost jazzy, I don't know, operatic came to mind, but that is so not true. There's a choir involved, so it just feels good. And if it was intended to be like a palate cleanser, like, oh, now you're in love, we're going to pull you out of all of these other emotional states to really feel how dense this emotion can be but not in a bad way, in a warm, welcoming way. If that was the intention of this track, holy shit. I'm just so in love with Odesza. You know what? I'm not even going to say if. I'm just going to give them the credit and say that this was the intention of this. And that inspires me to be like, Odesza they're just a pair of geniuses. Because of my relationship with love and all of that. It honors that. And I don't know, dude. I'm just obsessed with that. So this album does just a really nice job of keeping you engaged and creating this space to relate to it on a very human, emotional, whimsical way. I appreciate it deeply. Again, each one of these tracks is just an absolute banger, and not in the sense of like, oh, you're gonna be wanting to dance your fucking feet off. Who needs feet? Because Odesza's playing. Like, it's not like that. Each one of them holds a certain space for a certain relation. And yes, a lot of them are like, let's dance and let's boogie. But some of them are like, don't dance, just sway, just relax, sink into this and experience this track with us while we relate to you in this way. Those are my thoughts on Odesza. Really lighthearted, not heady or overthinking it at all. But yeah, if you don't want to relate to this album in that way at all, it is just a fun sci-fi inspired dance experience, yeah, I think that they do a really nice job. And I've seen Odesza twice. Luckily, God, I've just had such wonderful opportunities to go and see them that I'm really thankful for. Seeing them is also another layer of relating to this type of music, because like I said before, there is an added layer of feeling the music physically and relating to it on an even deeper emotional level. I saw them in Boston one year. They were at Boston Calling back when it was hosted like in the city, which was such a cool setting, like to be tucked into these buildings at a festival is something I haven't experienced since, and was just like really fun. They were playing In Return when I saw them first, and they were just on this tiny little stage, and it was just really, really fun. And then I saw them at the amphitheater in Nashville, Tennessee, and it was unreal. They were playing a moment apart, and their production had just like launched dramatically, and it's just an experience that they really think out, I think. Not to mention that they also, I think they try their hardest to have as many real instruments present for each track. They have a drum line, and the drummers are just so talented, and you can tell they're so happy to be there, and it's wild. If you ever get the experience to see Odesza, I highly, highly recommend it, just because it's really fun and totally worth it. And I hope that you do get that opportunity if you so want it. But yeah, Odesza is really interesting. I'm not sure what their plan is. They released another album a couple of years ago, I believe. It's called The Last Goodbye. And it also is such an experience, and also feels like they've totally evolved into this sound that they love. I think they've loved every sound that they've been, but this one, gosh, The Last Goodbye, I'll probably have to do another episode on that, because it is also an experience. I've been snacking on it lately here and there, and it's just, it just feels so, their music feels so intentional and so connected. I'm sure artists have been doing this for ages and ages, but I have been seeing this movement of electronic artists creating music that is intentionally connected to sound healing. So depending on hertz levels, you can access different energies, which I love. I did an episode on a book called 7 Secrets of Sound Healing, pop over there if you want like a quick and dirty what is sound healing. But lately I've been seeing this wave of artists who are taking all of those concepts into consideration and then creating music, and it just like ticks so many of my boxes and I love it. I can't wait to see who else comes out. I'm sure there are thousands of artists that I just don't even know about, so there's a lot of opportunity there too. And it feels like Odesza has been doing that for a while, and I'm excited to see what else they create. The albums that they have out right now, there are a few I'm missing, but the major ones that hit for me are In Return, A Moment Apart, which is what we spoke about today, and then The Last Goodbye. If you don't listen to anything else by Odesza, check out one of those three because they're just so fun and, again, connected. Thank you so much for sitting here with me and talking about Odesza and the way that they create in this world. I hope that you listen to at least one of their tracks. Give them a whirl. If it's not for you, that's okay. I truly hope that it is. But thank you again so much for listening. And I will catch you in the next one. Bye.